Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Welcome to episode 83 of Sports Management Podcast. Before we start, I just want to ask you all for a very small favor. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to it on Spotify and Apple and give it a 5-star rating. It would help me very much in getting it visible to more people out there. Thank you. Now, today's guest is Angelina Lawton, the founder and CEO of Sports Digita. Sports Digita is an industry-leading technology company helping brands drive sales revenue via Digitech, a revolutionary cloud-based presentation platform, or as Angelina puts it, PowerPoint on steroids. Angelina has been named Forbes' 30 most powerful women in sport, and she has vast experience from the sport industry, but also from the finance world. Much like ice hockey, her professional life has had 3 periods. In the first one, she spent over a decade on Wall Street. Then she transitioned into ice hockey, where she worked for the Tampa Bay Lightnings, being in charge of, quote, everything with the Lightning logo on it, end quote. And finally, in 2011, she launched Sports Digita, became an entrepreneur, and she has spent the last 11 years building the company, and they have worked with over 400 of the biggest brands in sports and enterprise worldwide. Get ready to learn how it was like working for her father on Wall Street, why she started Sports Digita, the challenges of having her husband as the general manager at Tampa Bay Lightnings, how to thrive in a male-dominant field, Angelina's 8 tips to becoming your best self, and much more. Angelina Lawton, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Nice to meet you, and great to have you on the podcast.
Of course.
You are the founder and CEO of Sports Digita. So can you tell us a little bit about what is that company and what it is that you do?
So Sports Digita is a company that is a software company. We have our marquee product, which is the DigiDeck. That's our platform. And this is what we use what teams buy from us to sell tickets and sponsorships. They also buy the DigiDeck outside of the sports world for really anything that, for anyone that's looking to present, to sell, to tell their story. So really just think about it as PowerPoint on steroids, mainly started in sports, as you know.
Yeah. So it's an industry-leading technology company that helps brands to drive their sales, as you said, and the DigiDeck is a big part of that. And I like that, as you said, it's a PowerPoint on steroids.
Right. It's a good elevator pitch, for sure, because there's so many software platforms out there. And so when you don't have a lot of time and you have this massive overload of software platforms out there, it's just a really quick, easy way for people to understand what we do.
Yeah, it's a great elevator pitch. But to explain it a little bit more in detail, so what is it that DigiDeck can do and do more than these other type of softwares like PowerPoint when they want to, make a sale?
So I would say the DigiDeck is a very elevated experience. So think about it as like a movie trailer for your company. And so with the integrations and how robust the platform is, we're integrated with Salesforce, we integrate with Gong, we integrate with, because of our open API, really anything that a company is looking to kind of connect with their tech stack, we are able to go in and become part of that kind of ecosystem. And that's been very helpful to people. So whereas PowerPoint is still very linear and very much, in my world, a bit archaic, we are really pushing the envelope to making, we're more than a presentation platform. We're more than that.
Yeah, nowadays there's a lot of video. It's becoming like if we talk about, how to present on social media, it's more video. People want to watch instead of just, still pictures. So is that something that you work with more, I guess, also like more, moving pictures and videos?
So what we're really seeing is an evolution from teams and companies that are not, in the sports world. They're looking to leverage content that is video. And that is the best way for me to describe it. We're not looking at something static anymore. We're looking at something that comes to life. So a great example for that is a new partner of ours, which is the Kentucky Derby. They've been selling their sponsorships on paper, for how many years? And obviously they've done great, but now since moving to the DigiDeck, they're able to actually see where you're sitting, videos of what that looks like. You're going to get the sights and the sounds of the races. So we're just really again, that elevated experience from PowerPoint. There's just so much out there, especially in the sports world, whether it's hockey or football or baseball, just to be able to capture that game day and what that vibe is and bringing that to life is the key to how we have become successful. We're just giving people a different way to sell.
And how is it? Because I know that some of your clients include, for example, New York Yankees, Los Angeles Lakers, Dallas Cowboys, which is obviously our sports franchises. But you also work with Ticketmaster, Visa, Cargill, which are non-sports. So, yes. I guess that you give type of a tailor-made service and product to them that can work both in sport and outside of sports.
Yes. And that is the beauty of the product. The product, really anyone that's using PowerPoint is game for our product. And so because we were able to find a really good niche at the beginning in sports and we knew how to tailor it, we helped them sell tickets. Whether it's special events, group tickets, single tickets, season tickets, whatever it is, we had that really niche carved out. And then we moved to the sponsorship side at a franchise and very focused on, that niche within sports. So the use cases in sports are very obvious and very specific, but outside of sports, it's really kind of anything is possible. It could be used for, for instance, Kaiser Permanente, which is a very, very large company here in the US. They're using it to onboard employees, for healthcare, for kind of human resources. We've got Ping, the golf club maker. They're using it to do all their fittings for clubs. So really, it's kind of the possibilities are endless. Dave & Buster's uses us to do all of their special events around the world. So that's another use case. So it's either very focused or it doesn't have to be.
It's not just, as we talked about before, to sell their product. So external meetings such as that is also a resource for internal use, as you said, for recruitment or, presentations internal.
Yes, absolutely. And it's been really fun. We've had some of our baseball's very progressive in how they use our technology. And they've even gone to use it now on not only the business side, but on the player side. And when they're recruiting players, wanting them to come on to their organization, they're using the DigiDeck. So it's a recruiting tool for players now as well. So that's pretty cool.
That's really cool. So how did it start, this idea of yours, that when you founded it? Was it that you saw this gap, you saw that PowerPoint and other software just wasn't good enough and you wanted to create something better?
Yeah, so I do have a big kind of marketing creative side to me. And I worked in the financial industry on their marketing corporate communication. So I helped do their presentations there. Then I went to go work in the NHL, from the financial world to the NHL. And again, they're helping them put together presentations. And I have a lot of interest in that. But I also was very bored and always looking for, I could only push the design so much with our designers. It was just design is design, PowerPoint is PowerPoint. What could I do to elevate that? So that's where I got the interest when I worked for the Tampa Bay Lightning, because, they were just such great assets within the arena. There was such great, everything around it was just so, I don't know what the word is, just very vibrant, very moving and, all that. So in sports, I'm like, God, we got to bring this to life. So that's how I got the idea for this. It didn't start as a product. I was an agency first. And so I worked with people like the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Minnesota Lynx, helping them do presentations but doing one-off. So they were like microsites. I ended up doing a project for the Minnesota Twins that was helping them really present some of their assets out in the outfield and a big sponsorship. And they just loved how the DigiDeck helped them portray their franchise. And so sports, you've probably heard I say this all the time on all the podcasts, it's a herd mentality. And what we were doing these one-offs for these teams, the Twins, other teams started to notice. And teams were just so hungry for something new to be able to showcase their sport and what was like to go to a LA Lakers game, what it was like to go to a Cowboys game, all of that. And so it just really filled a niche. It was just the right industry at the right time. So I left the Lightning and started Sports Digita in 2011. And that's kind of when, things were starting to evolve. The text social media was really not a thing yet. So we were able to capitalize on that. Digital was just becoming a thing. Teams and companies were just starting to think about what their digital footprint looked like. So engaging in that kind of aspect of marketing was a really big focus for me. And then from there, it just has evolved. I mean, now the biggest buzzword that we talk about everywhere is the tech stack, and, sales enablement, and how are you selling? How are you telling your story? So all of the above, the DigiDeck just fits nicely within that realm of what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. So you said you started in 2011. Mm-hmm. Everything digital just took a completely different turn during COVID. But at that point, I assumed that your company was at a quite mature state because that was like 8-9 years in. But how did you see the industry and the need for your product change during COVID when it was, working from home and all of this?
That's a great question. And so honestly, when COVID first hit, we were nervous. We didn't know what it was going to be. We readjusted budgets. We were really kind of de-risking our company as well as far as what we were going to be doing. And what happened was completely the opposite. COVID was the best thing that happened to this company, because we have been preaching for so long that you have to, don't have to get on an airplane. You don't have to be face to face. We are giving you that experience so you don't have to. So we really saw a big boom in our business during that time. And it was like this whole digital footprint just became even bigger. It was a nice to have before. And now it's like you had to have it. And so teams realized that really, really quick. Companies did too, obviously. So, and it helped us as well. I mean, we were practicing what we were preaching. We were eating, what we were making. So it was just, for us, the DigiDeck was perfect for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I've noticed also, that of course that COVID, if you see, from a health standpoint, is obviously terrible and so many people, but if you see from like a business standpoint, some businesses just completely got wrecked and some other industries just, were booming. And I feel like most things tech wise were just getting a boost from this.
It absolutely was. It was a must. Like I said, it was definitely something that you needed to do if you were going to continue to generate revenue for your company or still sell tickets. I mean, you weren't selling tickets per se, but you were gearing up because you knew sports was coming back. You still had inventory to sell. So that inventory at teams was also digital becoming much more important. So you didn't have to be part of the game day. There was just so much ancillary things around sports that you could start to get involved in.
Yeah. And now, 12 years in approximately, you have 50 people, I think, around in your team?
No, we're close to 100.
Oh, you're close to 100 now. Wow.
Yeah.
So how has that been from was it only you when you started it and then it has been, progressing?
Yes. So it was myself at the beginning, and I had we started out small. We were small for a long time. And I was outsourcing all of, a lot of things, the design, the development, because once we did that project for the Minnesota Twins, we really, I call it productized, because then instead of recreating the wheel every time we had a new client, we just made sure, we made it a priority. DigiDeck was going to become our product, versus, I'm not sure if I explain it great, but basically I was an agency before. So, you would do a one-off. So someone would add, it's a microsite, but it was the same engine for everybody now. And so that productizing was a big thing for us, for sure. So the dev team was internal, moved to internal in 2015. That was a big step for us. Before that, I thought, I didn't know I was going to own a tech company. To me, it was more of a design agency, but because of the success there, it quickly evolved into that. So it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of, I have a lot of young people that work here, a lot of developers. We've got a lot of just all different positions, but the young people are really what make this go. They understand technology so well, the design, they're so progressive. So we have a really young company, really a lot of young, smart people.
That's great to hear. And I'm interested to how you got into like sports tech in general, because I think you're the third woman now on my podcast from a sports tech perspective. And I'm always very interested to see, how you got into it. Were you interested in, STEM studies, or some people use, slide into it, or like how did you get into sports tech?
I would definitely think that it was a sliding into it because I didn't start that way. Sports has always been part of my life. I had two brothers that played sports. I married a professional hockey player, then went on to work for the NHL at the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so I loved sports. I was a woman that I didn't want to be in beauty or fashion or things like that. I like to play golf. I like to be doing what the boys are. So to me, it was just kind of a love of two things. It was just sports, entertainment, and really this technology evolved. And, quite frankly, very lucky because I didn't know how great it was going to be when I was doing it, when I was starting, but definitely slid into it. I didn't set out to do this. And sometimes that's the way things work out.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's good also to show that you don't, because many young people are worried for, they need to make the right educational path early. Otherwise they might not get a job. But I mean, there are other ways to get into the industry.
Absolutely. I mean, really, it's partly education, but more than not, it's your network and what you're willing to do. And there's just a lot of success stories of people that are in sports at very high levels that just didn't start that way or started out as interns and things like that. I've got kids that one's out of college and one's in college, and he's a junior at University of Wisconsin at Madison. And he is also putting that pressure on himself, thinks that he needs to know right away. And so that's a huge message. But sports there's just so many great ways to get into sports if you are a young person and want to do that. There's a lot of great like teamworks, and there's like all the great conferences. I mean, it's a very open entry for people that want to do it. They just have to find the right conferences and things to do. National Sports Forum. Yeah, there's just two great ones are NSF and ALSD, those two. If you're a young person wanting to get into sports, I definitely would check out those two.
Yeah, and I always encourage people to do as many internships as possible early.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you have said sometime that your professional life is like hockey. It has 3 periods. You have Wall Street, you have NHL, and then now it's a sport digital.
Yes.
You have mentioned a little bit about all of them, I think, but like, can you talk us through like how you started out in your professional career and how these, transitions between these 3 periods happen?
Yeah. So in about 1990 to 97, I worked in the financial world. I worked for my father, actually. They were out of London, and it was just a great experience for me. So I went to Arizona State, and from there I came back to Minneapolis and worked there. And that was probably the best education I could get. Working for my father was not easy. But there like you said, I interned during college. And when I was done, I went there and headed up the marketing, and then eventually became the director of corporate communications. So basically working as the liaison with the London office and making sure all of our branding, corporate communications, and presentations were being done properly. So that was kind of where I started to get my bug as far as presentations right there. So then in between, so that was my first period. So you're right. It's like my life is a hockey game. So first period was my Wall Street years, as you mentioned. And then in between the first and second period, I had 3 kids. So that was a little bit of a break. I worked up until I had my first child, Jack. And then after that, I had Nick and then Gabby. Then my husband became the GM. Like I said, he was a professional athlete, and he was now the GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And while I was there, so I moved down with the kids. And while I was there, I was really wanting to get back into the work world, and had become pretty good friends with the owner and his wife. They were a young couple out of LA. And we just started talking, and I just was telling him my background and, kind of the financial world. And he was looking for someone at that time to be, heading up their marketing. They had just bought the team, and there was a lot of things going on that needed help. And so I was pretty persistent, and finally he hired me. And so it was not a very great move to hire the GM's wife. So I had a lot to prove. And so I think that, like I mentioned at that time, social media was just coming on board. Digital was just starting. And it was just a perfect kind of canvas for me to start to put into execution on what I wanted to do and think about my career. And so that was just this whole marketing, but bringing it to the next level. So I was there for about 3 years. And then we ended up getting new owners, which means new owners meant a new GM. So I was loving my job. But then at that point, we were going to move back to Minneapolis because my husband was no longer the GM. And so at that point, I just said, okay, what I did for the Tampa Bay Lightning, I can do for other teams. And so that's really what, working there at the Lightning gave me a ton of confidence and really understand the inner workings of a franchise from all aspects, because I did have the player side through my husband, but then the business side through the owner. And I reported directly to him, and I got a lot of confidence. And that's what gave me my idea to do, he said to me, he goes, what you're doing for us, you could do for anybody, any of these teams. So that's how I started. So that was my second period for the NHL years. And then my third period is my entrepreneur years. So I transitioned over onto my own business and just started working with teams. And it was ripe for a digital company like ours and really the DigiDeck to become part of the franchise's tech stack. So they were, like I said, just looking for something different and something new. So it's pretty cool what we do. The brands that we work with are some of the biggest in the world. I would say right now, everyone always asks me which of our, leagues do we work the most. And I would say right now, our hottest sport that we're working with is golf. We do a lot with golf. We just did a project for Ryder Cup, the US Open. It's just so much cool stuff. So that's kind of who's leading the pack right now as far as who's using us. But and then obviously baseball, I would say is number 2. And then probably 3 is NFL. So it kind of switches around based on the season and what they're doing. But it's been pretty cool, the brands that we work with.
Yeah, that I understand that. And yeah, I see you also worked with the Green Bay Packers. We had actually quite recently a guest, Andrew Brandt, who was there for a decade.
Yes. So it's funny because I live in Minnesota. So I'm supposed to be a Vikings fan. But we do not work with the Vikings. It's the only team in Minnesota that we do not work for. But we do have a great partnership with the Green Bay Packers. So when there's a big rivalry, our office is very divided on half Vikings and half Packers, but I definitely reside on the Packers side for sure.
I see. That's interesting.
Yeah.
From what you said now, you said it was difficult to work, for your father, and also then you work when your husband was the GM. Did you feel like you had, more to prove, that you had this position, that you had to prove that you owned up to that position? Did you feel that sometimes?
Hell yes. It was the hardest job I've ever had was working for my father. And everybody always thinks oh, she worked for her dad, whatever. And it's just exactly the opposite. My father was so hard on me. And again, gave me the confidence to do what I'm doing because I worked in the financial world, which is very male dominated. I work in the tech world, which is male dominated. I work in sports. So 3 double whammy of men's kind of industries. And it was very intimidating. I was one of the only females there working with a bunch of Wall Street guys. And so having to prove myself day in and day out, that was difficult. Working, differently just because I wanted to be, I wanted to have my dad, be proud of me, and I wanted to start my career properly. So that was good. But then going to work as the GM's wife I knew that it was going to be sticky. I knew that it wasn't going to be favorable. I knew that I had a lot to prove. I had not been working for a little bit, so it was a chance that Oren took on me, which I'm always thankful for because I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for Oren. So a lot there to prove as well. Yeah, it was very difficult.
Yeah, I understand that. Later on, you must come out of this so much more confident in yourself and your abilities when you have been through that, and maybe people have doubted you and that you are there just because of this or just because of that. And now where you are now, that must be a really confidence booster.
It is, because this company that I have now is just, people that I've worked with in my past, that, I worked for with my father, or even my father, they look at me now, who I still am in touch with. They're just they're very, very, I don't know what the word, very nice to me. They're very, they love what I've done. There's been a lot of great work that we've done here at Sports Digita, and it's being recognized by people that I've worked with in the financial world and in the hockey world, which is always great. It makes me feel really good. We've got a great team here, so they've all made that possible.
Talking about your role at the Tampa Bay Lightning, you were the vice president of corporate communication, and you were in charge of, quote, everything and anything with a Lightning logo on it.
Right, exactly. It's the best way to say it because it was from picking the cheerleaders to what radio or what songs they were going to play during ice warm-ups to, what our signage looked like around Tampa at the airport, what their presentations were, what their radio ads were, what their newspaper ads were. Because at that point, we were still doing a lot of newspaper ads and things like that. So a lot of branding. So it was cool. And actually, it's a funny story because when I got to Tampa, I kept looking around. I'm like, why does everything say Hockey Bay? And that was literally like they were kind of in a brand crisis, I would say, because it was the Tampa Bay Lightning, but everything that they put together was Hockey Bay. And I was just like, I didn't understand. And so that was kind of one of the first things I did is I just switched everything to the NHL logo and the NHL brand. So that was a big thing. It was a lot of confusion.
In addition to Sports Digital, you're also a member at the Chief, a private network to build and drive more women into position of power.
Yes. So Chief has just been this organization that has taken literally the female entrepreneurs, businesswomen by storm. It is really a great, great concept. You have to be invited. You are able to interact with some of the smartest women in the world. And then the speakers that they have there are pretty incredible. So it's just been a great thing to be a part of. I'm not as active right now as I can be just with running a company. And so we all kind of ebb and flow into Chief when we can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But on that topic, what would be your best advice for young women or women in general to get into sports management or the sports business and maybe take a leading position?
So, like I said, if you're a young person and you want to get into sports, I would check out these conferences. I said NSF, ALSD. There's also a website called Teamworks. And on there, they have a lot of the sports internships posted. And so I would try to be, a lot of times these teams have these summer internships. You have to think about the summer internships literally the fall before. And if you can get into a team doing these internships, it's really smart. So if I were to do this all over again, that's what I would do. I would be trying to work at a team, whether it be minor, pro, whatever, and just start to be in the business and then join. There's a lot of groups for young women or men, but WISE is a big one for sports women in sports and entertainment. They have those in every single city now, I think. So that's another great way to get involved. And then obviously through your college, a lot of these kids are working at the colleges and the sports programs, maybe working for the basketball team. I know that our head of sports here, she's a woman, Christy Grady. She came from the NFL and she went to Notre Dame, played basketball there and started to work for the coach there. And that's how she got started. And then she went on to the Seahawks for 9 years, moved over to Kroenke Sports and then on to with me. So just a lot of networking is really what I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And conferences is really great just for that purpose. And then in internships in order to use, also networking, but also just to gain some working experience early.
Yes. And I would say, I keep going back to females, but I always encourage women, young women, especially if they want to get in sports, just like go that sales angle. For sure. There's just not a lot of women selling tickets. There's not a lot of women selling sponsorships. And so you do have a little bit of an advantage when your resume comes through because everyone is trying to do more with women.
You also have a new project together with your daughter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
An after-school project.
Yes. So she started the High Flyers, which was great. It was a course she put together it was an after-school deal for her at Edina High School. But basically what we did was we helped women, young girls, think about what classes to take when you're going to college, what kind of internships to look for, and then basic things like getting your LinkedIn profile up and what that should look like. So we did that exercise. And it's amazing to me how many young kids do not have their LinkedIn up to speed or even up. And so especially when you're looking for internships, the first thing that we do, like when we are looking at young people to bring on board, we go to their Instagram, we go to their LinkedIn, we go, it's all about your digital online presence. And so LinkedIn is number one for sure. And we really heavily preach that in that club that she did. So just kind of exposing these young women to the work world and what to expect. A lot of people like don't even know how to go for an interview and how to be prepared for an interview and things like that. So there's just a great passion that I have for that. And I don't get to do enough of it because it's alarming, not alarming, but it's really unbelievable how someone like they're going to college or going to high school. I know I didn't have the training. Like who's supposed to train you on all this kind of common stuff, you know? So we're trying to do that.
That's fantastic. And great also to hear that your daughter has this drive and that she set this up.
She does. She did. It was great. So I'm proud of her for sure.
Maybe she has seen you and your career and been inspired to start her own.
As a mother, you can only hope and pray that. So that would be awesome. That's where she got her ambition.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I read somewhere about your 8 tips to become your better self. Maybe you don't, need to share all 8 if you don't want to, but some of your best ones to, self-improve.
Oh gosh. Okay. So let me think. I usually write them down. I have them here.
Right. Okay.
I get asked. No, it's a good question, and I finally said to Krista, who helps with me with branding and everything. I'm like, we have to write them down because I get them asked so much, and so we finally did that. So that's good. So I'm ready for that.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. Number 1, problem solver. I always like to hire people that are problem solvers. I want them to solve as much of the problem as they can on their own and then come to me. If they're going to come with me with a problem, try to give me a solution. I think that's always really a great advice. I try to teach that to my kids as well. 2, sense of urgency. For us here, everything needs to be done yesterday. So if you work at a quick cadence, which I encourage young people, even my kids, just have a strong sense of urgency. And if you don't know when something's due, ask and make sure you're managing people's expectations as far as like when you'll have something done. Don't be afraid of sales or tech. I think a lot of young kids, they are. And it's like you see a lot of kind of the same majors over and over, the same first jobs over and over the same. So just really try to, and as a, I keep going back to the woman thing, but just sales and technology. But overall, that's just where the world's at right now. So many great jobs out there for that. Surround yourself with people smarter. Number 4, that's something that my father taught me at a young, early age. Don't be afraid to have people smarter than you, hire people, much more senior than you, whatever it is, because if you can sponge off of that and you guys all work together well, I think it's great. So I get really excited when I interview someone that I know is clearly smarter than me, because if they're going to come into the organization, they're going to make us better. So a lot of people will not want that. You have to be really strong and bold to do that. And I encourage that quite a bit. Don't apologize. I think a lot of times people are always saying they're sorry about things that maybe are not their fault. So it's not so much like don't be stubborn or anything, but just you don't always have to apologize because maybe you did do the right thing, or maybe you did do a project right, or you didn't get back to someone for a reason. So it's like a lot of people, this kind of goes for more women actually, but I mean, it's a lot of apologizing all the time. And so I try to really keep that for the things that really matter and truly apologize for things that are wrong. Finding your niche. I think that for an entrepreneur, it's about finding your niche. So if I would have started Sports Digida trying to be something to everyone, so not just sports, maybe I was just DigiDeck and not something in sports, I don't know if I would be where we are today, because when you're trying to catch so many different things, so many rabbits, you don't catch any. So finding a niche as an entrepreneur, I think is really, really key. So that's served us very well. And then my last one is the quote that I always say, and I have it really big outside of my office. It's feel the fear and do it anyway. That's probably like my biggest mantra throughout the last 10 years. There's just so many situations I've been in that have been really made me really nervous. Whether it was, I remember I was on Fox for a sports show, and I was like 5 minutes before. First of all, I was terrified to go on, and I was on with 3 other men, and I had gotten the questions about maybe 4 days before. So I was pretty prepared. I felt pretty good, still super nervous, made myself do it. They changed the questions like 20 minutes before because some breaking news had happened. And I was terrified. But I just sat there and I just did it anyway. So I could name 20 other situations like that where I wanted to throw up because I was so nervous. But I think that because I keep doing those things that make me fearful or nervous and do them anyway, it's just really served me well. So I would encourage people to do what scares you the most. Just do that.
Yeah, that's great. I love all of them. And as you said, like being a problem solver and the don't apologize one is very interesting. I heard a quote somewhere. What he said was that instead of like apologizing, because that usually brings like a negative tone.
Yeah.
For example, in saying, I'm sorry I'm late, you can say, thank you for your patience, because then it's a more of a positive thing. So I like that type of mentality that you said there.
Agree. And I've read those same things too, and it really resonated with me. And so I like, there's an article out there that just kind of pivots all these kind of negative thoughts, like you just said. And I think it's really smart.
I hope that the listeners wrote those down now, so they have them also written down like you have.
Yeah.
We have mentioned a little bit before, but has there been any bumps on the road in your career? And if so, how did you overcome them?
I would say my biggest bump was when I first started out at Sports Digita and not understanding that I was evolving into a tech company and trying to think I could run a tech team. That was a really, really hard, big mistake on my part. I've said this before, but because we're increasing our customer base, I was literally building the plane and flying it at the same time. I mean, it was truly that. And so I didn't have a head of technology. I was trying to manage this team, and this, developers and these tech people are very, very smart, but they work very, very differently. And someone like me was just not equipped or smart enough to manage them. So it didn't affect us financially. It didn't affect our business because I was basically like a duck, with the water underneath. No one knew like the turmoil that was going on underneath in those kind of 2 or 3 years. So it was a huge step improvement when I brought our president on board, Corey Factor, and he was by his background was technology and building teams and building technologies, softwares and things like that. So he definitely righted the ship. But that would be my biggest mistake. If I were to do it all over again, I would do things much differently. I would have brought someone in much quicker than I did and not have thought I could do it on my own, because there's just looking back, I don't even know what I was thinking. Somehow I made it through, and we compensated with great service.
I heard recently someone said on a similar situation that they focused too much to work in the business than on the business. Maybe it was something like that, and that you are so much, in the business when you start a startup that you cannot, get the...
Yeah, the 30,000 level view.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I know that people say that. I feel like that's one of my strong suits, is to kind of really macro think about everything and how everything is affecting. But I definitely, like, for me, this business is not a job. This business is a passion. I don't even, like, when I get paid, it's like I forget that I'm going to get paid. And so I just think understanding and being in it every day, I love it. But I definitely do have that focus from above. I always at all times really know what I want to do with the business, what the next step is, things like that. But believe me, I have a lot of other negative things, but that's just one I feel like I'm okay at.
I see. I'm sure you have many more great talent as well, obviously. And also something we haven't mentioned yet is you have several awards as well from Forbes magazine and Entrepreneur of the Year, etc. So it speaks for yourself that, of course, you have done many things right.
I appreciate that. It's obviously a team effort, and I wouldn't be here if I don't have a great team. I mean, it just doesn't happen.
It's important.
It's everything.
Approaching the end here, is there something that I haven't yet asked you that you want to mention?
No, I mean, I think that it's important to understand, maybe, I know this is a sports management class, but it's important, I think, to understand that our growth for Sports Digita has been in sports, but for 2022 and 23 and on, it's really outside of sports. And it's not that a question that you're not asking, but just it's an evolution. And it's just like the sports world is, it's like a lake. Everyone knows everybody. You have to do very well, otherwise you won't stay very long. But now we're kind of graduating to this big ocean of many, many people to be able to use our platform. So I think that's been a very big transition for us, and what I've been focused on quite a bit the last 2 years. So I think maybe that, just that, and not really any question, but just that's what we're doing. That's our focus.
Interesting to see where sports digital will go now in the future to expand into different sectors.
I know. So now we have a question of what do we keep our name Sports Digita or do we go to DigiDeck? So there's a big brand, debate going on here. And so it's a nice problem to have. So, keep tracking us. You never know. We'll see where we end up.
Yeah, I will do for sure. And if some of the listeners have some great idea for names, they can send those through and see if you get inspired.
That'd be awesome. I think Krista would love that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, the last question that I ask everyone is, if you can choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think that I should talk to?
I would say Brian Kelka. Brian Kelka has been a partner of ours, but he's very progressive. He was at the New York Yankees. He went on to, he's been at Brooklyn Sports Entertainment. Now he's at Islanders and has just been watching his career. And he's from New York and he has been everywhere and done everything and just a great conversationalist. And he would be tremendous for the younger people wanting to get in sports. Yeah, he's awesome.
I would love that.
Yeah.
That's a great name.
Yep.
I will write that down.
Okay, good.
Angelina, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
Of course, Marcus. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.